So everybody can do whatever he or she likes to make explosives. And this is very tricky and very dangerous. You can easily bring these materials aboard a plane. You can take different components by different people in separate containers and make the explosive aboard. And from all these methods that you see here, I can say that none of them does the job by its own. None suffices for our purpose. None of them can do it in 10 seconds. None of them has no false negatives and no false positives. And you have to realize that it will never be possible to have no false negatives and no false positives, but at least you want to have a 99.9 probability that everything works out well.
The new measures, since they've been in place since 6th of November 2006, are they appropriate, or are they infringing civil liberties and fundamental rights of passengers? I think they are. There has to be a human action intervening. If you get on a plane with a knife, the knife isn't going to attack anyone all by itself. So it's the people that need to be checked and not objects, because objects by themselves are completely inert. So the current security measures are not effective. In fact, sometimes they are simply mimicking what the American administration wants, and today they have the power to impose them throughout the world, because we tend to consider that there might be American citizens in any airplane, and therefore we have to go along with what the Americans want. But as far as I'm concerned, that is not acceptable.
Starting from November 6, did we reduce the risk or not? Question mark. Ma réponse est non.
I'd say no.
I think that's not the case. I think it is more to make passengers giving the feeling that flying is safe, but that's a political statement, than that it really will do the job.
It's clear we have two areas of discussion. One is this particular provision efficient? This something has to be something which is diminishing the risk. That's the question mark. And the second area is, are there other measures in which we are doing? We don't have to mix them up, because otherwise we have to use all of them. The question is still, is this specific provision improving the situation for something more than zero?
The original proposal was actually that passengers should not carry any liquids at all. We, the airlines, wanted as much as possible passenger convenience to continue, and for passengers to be able to carry at least a minimum amount of liquids. And this ended with the proposal to have 100 milliliters, you know the system, in a 1 liter bag. If there is a real threat, can the measure proposed reduce the risk? And more importantly, from our point of view, are there any equivalent measures to reduce the risk? If there are alternatives, can those alternatives have a lesser impact on passengers and industry? Why am I saying this? Because as you very well know, today the full cost of implementing security measures still falls on industry and passengers. So the impact on industry and passengers is something we should have a say on.
We are very worried because the measure was taken in November, so this data refer, for example, to the effect on the confiscation are related to the lower season, not to the peak season. So if we do not find a proper mutual recognition of duty-free goods with the third countries, it will be practically a disaster.
The focus of my few minutes here today is really about transfer passengers, which for us poses the biggest problem now. It's when you get to passengers leaving the Union or coming into the Union, that's where the problem arises. And this is leading to even further confusion. Australia is a case in point because Australia have now implemented them at the end of March, but they've also added another layer of regulation which is not in the EU regulations, where they're insisting that passengers arriving from EU, for instance, or from anywhere else into Australia have to be taken off the plane at the last port of call, fully rescreened and put back on again. And that leads to the confiscation of any duty-free products they have purchased anywhere else, including Europe.
In the meantime, thanks to an Austrian court which considered exactly this issue as to whether, if there were secret lists listing banned objects, whether the individual citizen was bound to obey such a list. And this was referred to the court for a preliminary ruling. And I don't know at the moment what the outcome's going to be, but in the meantime, I've had a series of statements of position from individual countries written about the issue of this issue. And the fact is that there are some of the newer members of the EU, Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, all wrote and said this is nonsense. You can't, on the basis of a secret list, start imposing punishments on a citizen.
I would like to say that we always believed that the measures or rules, like in the regulation 1546, are interim measures, interim solution, basically to address the new threat of liquid explosive that was discovered the 10th of August during the London flood. We, as a Commission, in the regulation 1546, put into the preamble of the regulation that every 6 months we'll do the review of the measures, and we basically encourage the industry to do some technological, scientific research in order to find a technical solution to get rid of the regulation of 1 liter bag and basically to do something for the passengers' convenience. But you heard this morning that it's not so simple.
The harmonization within Europe is an advantage over the national legislation. We have a kind of harmonized approach. However, out of the perspective of a global business, what we are doing here in Europe is a regional legislation. Passengers, as I said, from China, for example, if they are making this experience that transferring in Europe at European airports using European airlines is much more difficult and harms them, they will avoid our industry. They will avoid Europe. They will avoid these carriers. I'm convinced we need to focus on these two elements, the more international focus and a redefinition or an alternative system for a security system. And I'm also convinced that political initiative and responsibility is essential.
Question today is whether these measures are manageable, balanced and effective. And clearly, in my view, the answer is no. The next question to be answered is, what's the point of keeping these measures in place if they are not effective, not balanced, not manageable?
And here we have had very transparent opinions on how inefficient these measures are, to what extent they protect or they just give an illusion of protection, and in how distortionate way they are being implemented. And I think that's a very clear and objective conclusion. On this institutional issue, it is also important to underline that nobody has ever said that this was adopted under a secret procedure. What we are saying is that this has been a secret decision. The decision is secret and remains secret, and it cannot be enforced before the court. And alone the Commission adopted this decision based on a regulation that in theory allowed it to do so, and imposing obligations to citizens based on that decision. The Parliament makes decisions by votes. If there's not a vote, there's not a decision. It's as simple as that. And the Parliament has never, nor at committee meeting, nor at plenary meeting, voted on these. So it is very clear that other things are exchanges of views, can be taken or whatever. The Parliament, as a democratic institution, only expresses its views on votes, and never has the Parliament had any vote on this.